Hi everyone, it's Ren here. Hope you are doing well, guys. Before I start this video, let me just remind you that you can have a look and purchase my book if you're interested in psychological fictions, the likes of Kafka, Dostoevsky, Proust, and Hermann Hesse. Quite cheap. Links down below if you want to support a fellow YouTuber, INFJ in my case. But in this video, I do not want to talk about INFJs, but rather about the difference between the INTP and the INTJ type. And as per my fashion, I will be using slightly different methods from the methods that you might be used to in a lot of other videos. I'll be speaking somewhat allegorically and using some insight from philosophy, but hopefully the insights I provide will be of help in distinguishing easily and quickly between those two types. So INTP and INTJ, as you know, the function stack of these two types are completely different, and if we focus for now on the dominant function and the auxiliary function, in the case of the INTJ you have introverted intuition, extroverted thinking, and ITE. In the case of the INTP you have introverted thinking and extroverted intuition, TINE. How does that translate into a difference of personality? Now let's focus perhaps first on the thinking functions, so TE in the case of the INTJ and TI in the case of the INTP. And let's further conceive of there being in every person whatsoever, a relationship between thought and the world. We experience the world through thought, okay? And we interpret the world through thought. Now, you have to imagine that this relationship between thought and the world is qualitatively quite different between INTJ types and INTP types. What I would say is that in the case of an INTJ type who uses TE, thought is an inner reflection of the world, okay? Which means that it is the world that is the primary conduit of truth. In the case of the INTP, the world is an outer reflection of thought, which means that it is thought or the mind that provides the primary access to truth. Now, this doesn't mean that INTPs are solipsistic dreamers and that they create truths in their minds without caring about the world. What it means is that truth ultimately is always residing in a judgment. You have to decide, what is true, what is not true. It's not the case that truth is just this floating thing around us that just happens to exist and we can occasionally discover it. It's not that there is a truth, it's that certain things are true and certain things are false. And in the case of the INTP, what you have is this existential conviction, if you like, that whatever truth there is, that we can be derived from observation, certainly in the world, because it is the world that provides us with the data, the perceptual data for our observations. Whatever truth there is needs, in the last instance, to be checked by the mind. So it has to be, whatever operations have to be produced to get to truth are secured from the data of the world, but then operated upon by the minds. So in the last instance, it is the mind that is the repository of truth in this sense. Whereas in the case of the INTJ, it's not really the case. There's this absence of existential conviction that in the last instance, mind has to check for truth. The world already in itself and objectively is where things happen objectively and where truth is to be observed. And what that means is that in the case of the INTJ, there's no going back to mind to then check whether something is true or not. That's why if you see in the INTJ's philosophical systems typically, but even in their mathematical careers, when they are mathematicians, there is really the focus on the objective data and a slight suspicion when it comes to the acrobatics of logic to check for the accuracy of the data, which you see a lot in the case of the INTP. And so what remains then is to say, once there is something true, once we have something true in one case or the other, how to interpret it, how to make use of it, how to figure out which truth is the most relevant, the most important, because many things are true, that the tree leaves are green or that the sky is blue, but maybe that's not what we're interested in. So how do we figure out what matters in this truth that has been identify by means of distinct relationships between world and thought. Well, that's where the function of intuition comes into play. In the case of the INTP, through extroverted perception, and specifically intuition, NE, there will be an ease with comparing the data of the world with different models for interpreting the data and checking it for accuracy. And so the relevance of the true statement is identified through comparing different models. In the case of the INTJ, it's a little bit different, and it can sometimes, apparently to non-NI dominant, seem almost a bit like cheating, but it is done by introverted intuition dominant function, often on the basis of what appears a lot of the time to be a gut feeling, and the INTJ, the INFJ similarly can't really explain how it is done, because it is just how introverted intuition tends to work. So there is this intuition about what the world can make available as an important truth, whereas in the case of the INTP, the world has to be submitted to thought, and whatever model thought can devise to get to the most important truth is figured out by juggling between models through extroverted intuition. Let me know what you think, guys. See you soon.